Hey, so it's nice to meet you and really appreciate you joining us this afternoon.
Yeah, thank you. Glad to be here.
You know, one of the things that's fascinating is I'd probably use the term unadvisedly, but the explosion in terms of interest in hydrogen all over the country right now. Green hydrogen, blue hydrogen production, et cetera, transportation. Tell us a little bit about your company, why hydrogen? We're really interested in the fact that you've got a hydrogen ferry, and I guess you're going to start trials next month in San Francisco Bay.
Yeah, no, it's an exciting time for the space for sure. I've been working on decarbonization projects in the maritime industry for the past decade, and really when we were starting out, most ships were running off heavy fuel oil. And so we had a long path ahead of us to get down to a low or zero carbon shipping economy. And the role that hydrogen is going to play, I believe it's not going to be, the only solution, but it's certainly going to play a pretty important one in the shipping industry as we electrify vessels so that they run off, with zero carbon. And then how do we get the electrons on board? Are we packing batteries on board? It's a little bit challenging with weight and size restrictions on board a ship. And so where hydrogen really does play a critical role is you can bring a lot of energy in the form of gaseous or liquid hydrogen or other hydrogen-based mediums onto a vessel. And so that just means you can go farther, faster, and keep the shipping industry moving the way it is today, just with zero carbon.
Yeah, I mean, I see huge opportunities. I was Mark. I want to turn it over to Mark in a second, but we're helping somebody in Panama look at how to refuel ships on the Pacific side, and they're looking at an LNG port, but we suggested that they look at hydrogen, and they like that idea, hydrogen and ammonia. So anyway, I mean, there's just it's happening really, really fast. So that's super interesting. Mark, I think you had a question.
And my question, coming from Open Exchange that handles virtual meetings and again tries to reduce carbon footprint, all the alternative energy solutions, some of them are blue state, red state, and some can be really for the entire country. Do you think hydrogen is one that everybody can get behind, or do you think there are going to be points of view like wind and solar that not everybody is behind it?
Yeah, I don't see as much of a political issue, more as who are the big majors that have existing infrastructure in place for this, for today's economy, and who is going to have that infrastructure stranded if the economy moves to being hydrogen based. I initially would have said, wow, I think oil and gas companies are maybe in a bit of trouble if we move this direction, because they have so much infrastructure out there today that might be stranded in the next 30, 50 years. I've been, I think, pleasantly proven wrong. I think some of those, industries, those really entrenched industries are really embracing it and using their expertise and their access to capital to build out, what plans and strategies for the transition. I don't think it all has to be hydrogen. I think nuclear could play an interesting role. I think carbon sequestration can play a very interesting role, and as we get into decarbonization of our economy. But I think hydrogen goes across the aisle. Building out infrastructure means jobs, and clean energy jobs are a very hot topic right now. And I think that's blue, red, or anyone. So I think really it's about what industries are going to be resisting it. I thought it might have been oil and gas, but I think I might be wrong, because they might be some of the leaders in it as well.
Well, that's just to jump in really quickly, I mean, that's the thing that's astonished me. I started traveling again in May, and I went to Texas, and all everybody wants to talk about in Texas is the energy transition and oil and hydrogen. I mean, the Port of Corpus Christi has a green hydrogen production facility, and they're also looking at sequestration offshore, and they want to be the hydrogen port for the world. So it's fascinating how quick this transition has happened, at least in my mind.
And it goes without saying, there's been a lot of events that have made everyone rethink their lives and what they rely on day to day, and whether it's being at home and sort of being very aware of your surroundings and your own energy use, or it's the weather events that have made it so unavoidably crystal clear, what the impact of climate change is. So it's been really, really cool to see this, like you said, this real accelerated adoption of climate change and climate tech that's going to help solve the issues.
Norman's got this big conference coming up in 3 weeks, and it really is to raise awareness about the projects in front of us. And I say that project finance is really the second derivative of imagination, and because you need to convince people about your project and how they're going to finance it. And now with a broader, longer scope of imagination, it may get a little bit easier to finance the projects that you're working on, both locally and throughout the country. Are you seeing that a bit? Are you able to tell the story in such a way that the financing's coming a little bit easier?
Well, it's very well put. The financing and the project finance of anything that we dream up ultimately will be the determinant if it's going to be successful and get launched. And it's certainly been a challenging environment when we work with big infrastructure, just because we're putting together new infrastructure that requires infrastructure like dollars, private equity, institutional banks that are less accustomed to venture-like risk,
right?
Of working with new technologies, but then you do have these new technologies that need to be proven in these applications. Right? We're using a technology that is proven in other applications, but has never been used in maritime. So there's certainly technology risk there, and the venture world is very accustomed to low capital. Venture capital doesn't like to necessarily build, roads and bridges and other infrastructure. So there's this gap in between where we're looking for this catalytic capital to come in and help push over the first domino. And one of the things that's been very useful for us is working with agencies, government agencies that have grant programs. I'll give a little bit about the story of this particular vessel. Received a grant from the California Resources Board, and then we were able to start putting private equity into it, and then we started to work with banks to finance the full build of the boat once it got started, and worked with California yet again in some similar related agencies, the NorCal FDC, California Infrastructure Bank, the Cal iBank. They were able to put together a climate tech finance program that made a loan guarantee available. And that one I really want to highlight as well, because what that enabled us to do, and I think this is so crucial, was to go to one of our usual banks. So not, specialized pocket of capital that's focused on new technology, but a traditional bank that, yes, they have incentive to be in this space. They want to support their customers. We work with them in other projects, and KeyBank was the bank that partnered up with NorCal FDC and Cal iBank with a loan guarantee program to make a traditional construction financing loan available to the project, and as well as a term loan after we deliver the vessel. And that is just, that is really what makes this all happen. If you can bring traditional capital into this space, once it gets comfortable, there'll be more and more of that. And so loan guarantee programs from the state or federal, I think, are going to be hugely helpful as well.
That's really important. One of the things that we are pushing at the event that Mark talked about, where you all are going to participate, is that every state ought to have a dynamic state infrastructure bank, because that's the thing that drives innovation and it takes away some of the risk from the first movers. Tell us a little bit about, to close out, tell us a little bit about your technology. What's cool about what you're doing and how big is the market potentially?
Yeah. Well, the market, I look at the market from a amount of carbon to be reduced. And so the shipping industry, produces about 1 billion tons of carbon per year. So that's the market we're looking at by bringing these technologies into small vessels, medium vessels, and then eventually larger ocean-going vessels. We have the opportunity to decarbonize vessels that are now just burning diesel for the most part. So not just the carbon, but the diesel particulate matter goes away, the NOx, the SOx. And so huge opportunity in front of us. This particular vessel is a ferry. It's a smaller ship, 75 passengers, and it's gorgeous. It's on the water today. We launched it a few weeks ago, almost a month ago now, and we're just working with the Coast Guard on final approvals for the fueling procedures and all that. And this is a
very cool. That's very sea change. That's very cool.
That's right. It's named the Sea Change, and the fuel cell room is in the back. I don't know if we have a picture there. The next one down, potentially you could see the stern. So that fuel cell room in the back is where the engine is, and so those are essentially looks like battery racks or even data center racks of these fuel cell boxes. Those produce the electrons that are used to charge up the battery and also used to power the electric motor. The only emissions is pure water, and this system is relatively small to what's going to be needed for larger applications such as dry bulk tankers, container ships, cruise ships, but it's very scalable, and so it sort of scales up linearly. And so I see an opportunity to first work with ferries in the U.S. There's called 1,000 ferries in the U.S. They're all average age around 30 years old. Huge need for renewal, and we want to make sure that some of those ferries are, as those ferries get renewed, they're not built with more diesel that's going to last for another 30 years of diesel emissions. And we can sort of attack this market, specifically the ferry market, huge opportunity. Then we start to look at other port activities, tugs, hovercraft, ocean-going vessels. It's super exciting. And I do want to say one more thing about the capital. One thing we do not have today is like a PTC or ITC credit, for hydrogen or diesel displacement systems that are put in to essentially take out diesel engines. And I think that is a massive opportunity. I know there's a lot of talk about it. That's really how solar, in my eyes, how solar came down to the cost that it is today. Just allowed for so much capital to flow into the space and build, and that brought the volume. That just brought the cost down precipitously. Yep. And so I think there's a huge opportunity for all of us to see, to support an investment tax credit for the construction of hydrogen infrastructure, because that'll really bring down the cost, which will just increase the adoption.
Yeah, that's a great message. That's a great way to end this. Mark, do you want to take us off?
I bet, yes. Those slides are terrific, and this is live right now, and it's going to go to video on demand. So if you're okay, we'll put those slides associated with it so people can pull that down. And if there are other documents, we'll get Elias to help us out on that. But thank you so much for jumping in. Everybody here is preparing for a very busy October and then in 2022, and your project helps bring to life infrastructure so people can tangibly understand what's at stake. And so we really appreciate your time today.
Thanks for your support and interest.
Great to meet you.
Thanks, everybody.